Eva Nathanson, thank you so much for taking time to share your story with us today.
Hi. Just hold the mic close to your mouth. Okay. I am a mother, a grandmother, a hospital administrator, an artist, and also a Holocaust survivor. I was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1941, January, to what you call the upper class of Jewish families. My grandfather was a Kohen, and he was a baron. And my birth father, may he rest in peace, had a small factory in Budapest, and he was a Levite. My grandfather had a huge estate at the border of Czechoslovakia and Hungary, and we had provided the glatt kosher dairy goods to the two countries. And also my grandfather was working with the underground, because as you have probably studied, that Hungary was not invaded at 1939 because it was a part of the Austrian-German monarchy, but we had all kinds of issues already. But the Jews in Czechoslovakia were already in major problems, so my grandfather 2 or 3 times a week took his coach and went to the border, and anybody who tried to escape from Czechoslovakia and Poland, he would bring them to the estate and kept them there until they found a place for them to go to be safe. One of the peasants went out to drink one night, and he was bragging about the Jew he is working for, who is not only making sure that there is no child labor in his land, but also making sure that everybody has a day off on Sunday, but he's also saving Jews from Czechoslovakia. This man did not know that he turned my family in. Some of you may know what dyslexia is. I am dyslexic, and I learned from a very early age that I need to memorize everything, otherwise I can't write anything. So everything which I'm telling you is from memory. My first experience, anything to do with the Holocaust, was I was about 1.5 years old, and I stayed with my grandfather at that time because my birth father was already murdered by the Nazis because he escaped from the war camp to give me a birthday present. And when he went back to the work camp, they made him dig his own ditch, shot him and buried him alive as an example of what not to do. So my mom sent me to my grandfather's house to stay there because they had help there. And she would come every Thursday to take care of me because she was running the business in Budapest the rest of the time. My earliest memory is when one Saturday night after sundown, my mom said to me that I did not have to go to sleep early that night because we were going to have an art project. Now, you know what is it like when your parents said you don't have to go to sleep. I was so excited. I remember grabbing my doll with my one hand, which my dad gave me. That was my treasure. And the 3 of us went down to my grandfather's main room. And I noticed that my mother's sisters, they had all tears running down on their faces. And the kids were sad. I mean, I was the youngest. My nephews and all the cousins were older than I was. And I noticed that everybody was so sad. And I couldn't understand how could be an art project so sad. What they were doing is they were cutting out the yellow stars and putting it on the clothes, because that was when the law came out that every Jew in Hungary had to wear a yellow star when they went out. And that meant that they could kill them, they could do anything to them, and they would not be punished for it because we were marked as undesirables. Now, we were not the only ones who were undesirables. Homosexuals were undesirables. Anybody who had a different intellectual understanding than the government had undesirables. Anybody with any kind of physical or emotional disability were undesirables. We all had different things to wear. We had the yellow star. So that was my first experience. I am 83 years old. I don't wear anything yellow to this day, because the yellow star, to me, was burned into my memory about all my family being so sad. The next memory is a few months later, I am upstairs with the young lady who is helping me to get dressed. I am less than 2 years old, and we heard trucks coming into the courtyard, which was very unusual in the suburbs at that time. Everybody had horse and carriages. And then we heard shouting, and then we heard guns to be fired up, and she ran down to check what was going on. Now, this was an 18-year-old peasant girl, strong. I thought she could protect me from anything. She would be not afraid of anything. She came back white as a snow. She was stuttering, and she told me that she and I has to go on a hide and seek, and that if anybody talks to me, I should accept I was deaf and dumb and don't understand. And that's all she said. And I remember she held it to my hand, and she said, I can take one item with me. So I took my doll, and the two of us were going through areas of the estate I had never been before. And as we were coming across the courtyard, I saw my 4 aunts, all my cousins, my grandfather, my great-grandmother. Everybody was being pushed on the truck. They were not dressed for traveling. And I was trying to wave at them, and she told me, I told you you are supposed to be unseen and unheard. And I remember being hurt because they were going on a trip and I wasn't. And then I was also trying to see how come my relatives didn't make any motions to me, but they also didn't want anybody to know that I was part of the family. And then the trucks moved away, and I never seen them again. We lost 96% of our family during the Holocaust. At that point, somebody from the underground came to the house where I was at that time, and they told that they have to smuggle me back to Budapest because my mother and I are also on a list, and we need to disappear. I was taken back to Budapest. By that time, my mother packed a little overnight bag for me and an overnight bag for her. She took all her valuables, all the jewelry, all the money she could find, because she knew who was ever going to hide us, we were going to have to pay. Also because we were not supposed to be alive, everything they had fed us had to be purchased in the black market. They thought that this will blow over for a little while, so my mom told the neighbors that we went to visit some relatives. But the next 2 years, I was hidden all over Budapest with my mom. I was hidden in cellars, attics. I was hidden in cabinets. Once I was hidden in a chest of drawers where I had to lie flat. I was not allowed to breathe. I was not allowed to move, not allowed to say anything. I was told that I had to learn how to control my bodily function, and that was one of the most difficult things because you couldn't just go to the bathroom when you had to go. And many of the places we were hidden had outhouses, not even bathrooms in the house, so it was making it very difficult. I was hidden once in a closet behind all the clothes. I remember the smell of the mothballs and the unwashed clothes. It was very difficult and it was very difficult to breathe. We were hidden for about 6 months or so when they found a little girl who was even younger than I am on the street, the underground, and they found out that her parents were taken away. So they gave her to my mom. They said, well, you have 1 kid, 2 couldn't be that much worse. What meant is not that I had a friend, but it's also meant that less people were willing to hide us because now they had to hide 3 people, not 2, and 2 kids. One of the places, for instance, we were hidden is somebody dug a hole in the middle of the living room. They covered it with a piece of material. We were underneath it, and they put a piece of plywood over it with little holes where you could had some breath. But we were not allowed to move. We were not allowed to turn. Usually we were lying or sitting, crouched up, until somebody in the household figured that it was safe for us to get up. Usually one person knew where we were hidden, or that we were hidden. The other people in the family didn't. So we had to be very careful that we didn't move. Like these people were having lunch and dinner above us, and we were not allowed to make a move. And while we could smell their food, We were starving down there. The 2 years we were hidden, I remember getting a piece of bread, water, and once in a while, if we were very lucky, a cup of broth, and if we were really lucky, some kind of vegetable. I don't remember having anything substantial for the 2 years we were hidden. I also picked up some kind of disease in one of the places we were hidden, and my mother knew that if they know that I'm running a fever, they would not keep us. So my face was being wiped with washcloths continuously so people won't see that I was running a fever. I was by this time pretty sick. One of the times as we were taken from one place to the other, we were caught. And this was already when they started to deport Hungarian Jews. It was in 1943, beginning of 1944. And they threw my mother on one truck and my little friend and I to another truck. And this is the first time I'm separated from my mom. And I am petrified, and I'm also by this time very sick and could hardly, from the fear, I could feel my stomach turning and churning. And we are on a truck with a bunch of crying children with running noses and crying, and I pulled my little friend in the corner because I was told that we can always have to be unseen and unheard. And all of a sudden, as I look out the bottom of you remember the trucks which had those little wooden strips on the sides? I am so sure that even on my tippy toes, I could barely see out on the bottom of the strip. I saw Ford SS following the truck. And by this time, my experience with anything to do with the black uniforms and the swastikas were very scary. So I remember feeling totally petrified. And all of a sudden, I see two of the men giving the reins to the other two, climbing on the truck we are in and looking through the children, and I am petrified. My instincts tell me that I am in trouble. And all of a sudden, I see the two shiny black boots in front of me, each of them picking us, one of us off, and threw us over the side of the truck into the other two SS arm. And I am petrified, and I lost it. I lost my bodily functions. I lost everything. I threw up. I soiled myself, and I wanted to die. I am 3 years old, 3.5 years old. I'm supposed to take care of my little friend who is younger than me, and I lost it. I remember I wanted to die. I felt there was no hope, anything. And I was silently crying, and all of a sudden, the horse goes to this suburb in Budapest. They get off the horse, they take us off the horse, take us into the cellar, and there is my mom. These 4 men were not SS. They were the underground saving us. I remember seeing my mother, it was like, there must be a God. There has to be something good. I remember the first good thing happened also. I was so dirty and filthy and smelly that they figured these people couldn't hide us that way. So they found this little wooden tub, and they filled it up with lukewarm water, and they put me in it. And I remember washing away the dirt and the filth and the embarrassment, and I knew there was hope in life. I remember feeling the first time in that time that I felt there was hope. The other thing I remember very correctly is that after this time, they put us into a cellar. And what they did is they put all the junky furniture in the front, and in the back there was a little area which was for us. And in Hungary there is snow between November and March, April, and so everybody puts everything away during the summer to eat for the winter. So they had sacks of potatoes and root vegetables in earth, and they made a little inclusion for us where the 3 of us were hiding, but the vegetables and the potatoes were starting to mildewing, and you smell the mildew. It was pretty yuck. And we were lying down there, but the only problem was that we weren't the only thing in this room. There was a lot of rats. My mother kept on covering our bodies with her own, so the rats will not nibble on us. And by this time, my mother ran out with all the money she had and all the jewelry and everything, but she was an amazing artist. She was able to knit anything. So what they did is they had give us yarn. My little friend and I, her name was Valeria, and our job was is roll the yarn into balls, and my mother was knitting day and night. Those years they had the metal knitting needles, and to this day, I can hear the clicking, especially if something goes wrong in my life, I can hear the clicking. I am an artist, I paint, sculpt, do ceramics, and I'm a silversmith. I never was able to learn how to knit because the knitting needles brought back all the stuff I didn't want to remember. We were there until a while, and in 1945, when the Russians were coming in from the east and the Allies from the west, the Hungarians decided they didn't want any witnesses. They had actually searched all the houses, and if they found any Jews or any other undesirables, they dragged them to the Danube. They tied 4 or 5 people together. They used one bullet because they didn't want to waste any bullets on a bunch of Jews, and they shot one person into the Danube where it was flowing the fastest. And that one person would drag the other people down. You could hear first the begging, the pleading, the trying to bribe, whatever they could, and then you could hear the gurgling, and they disappeared, and then the dead bodies came up. The Danube is the big river at Budapest. It was covered with dead bodies and blood. And each time a group was shot in, we moved closer and closer. And all of a sudden, I am 4 years old. My little friend is 3.5. And I hear this, and then I feel the rope going around our body. It is so tight that I cannot breathe. I'm holding my doll. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice telling my mom, "You dirty Jew, I know who you are. You lived in the same house as I did before the war started. If you promise that you will testify that I didn't kill you and these 2 brats, I won't shoot to kill." My mother, of course, agrees. I remember being dragged several feet as we were tied together. Meantime, I cannot breathe, and I'm petrified. And we are at the edge of the river. I see the gun go off. We are falling into the river. Now, I am not sure if we were pushed or we fell in, but we fell into the river, and this is not where the river is going fast. This is at the edge where the reed roots and the rocks are, and my mother wiggles around, so our face is not in the water, but the water is so cold, there is still ice on the edges. I remember little by little have no feelings in my legs, and there is no feelings in my body, and I literally totally frozen, no feelings, and then somebody comes and pulled us out of the water, cut the rope, and we were taken to the last place we were hidden. And the second great thing happened. This time, all 3 of us got washed because they did not want all these bloody, messy people being hidden. And I remember all 3 of us had a chance to get washed and got some dry clothes. And then we were taken into the room. And this is the first time when I saw there were other people in the room, not only us. There were people lying on the floor. I don't remember exactly how many people. There must have been about 10. You could smell the fear and unwashed bodies, dirt, misery in the room. It was very stifling. The windows were covered with dark material. And my mother found a little corner for the 3 of us. And we were in the corner all cuddled up, and once a day we would get a piece of bread or something, and then we would get some water. And we were there for a few days, and all of a sudden and by this time I am both emotionally, physically, and psychologically a total mess. I am totally traumatized. And so even if I was sleeping on my mother's arm, when any kind of noise would wake me up. So I remember the door opens up and there is 3 men standing at the doorway. The man whose house we were, I recognize the owner of the house we were at, but there is also 2 soldiers there with guns on their shoulders and on their waist, and by this time my experience with anybody with a gun was very scary, even though that I noticed that the uniforms were not black, that they were khaki. all I saw is the guns, and I started to whimper, and my mother tried to calm me down. She didn't want to have the attention, and she was trying to calm me down. But meantime, my little friends figured, oh, if she's whimpering, there must be a reason. So she started to whimper. So my mom tried to calm the both of us down, and all of a sudden, I see the man and the soldier coming to us, and I am petrified. I am so scared I could hardly breathe because all I see is the guns. And all of a sudden, a man standing in front of us puts his hand into his pocket, takes something off. It was wrapped in a piece of paper, breaks the thing in half, and shoves it into our mouth. It was a piece of chocolate. I stopped being scared right away. This was the first time in 2 years I had something delicious. I remembered it melting down my throat and going down, and my eyes opened very quickly and stopped whimpering. And to this day, to me, liberation equals chocolate. So if you open my freezer, there's a lot of chocolate. There may not be other food, but there is a lot of chocolate there. And I always find a reason to eat it. If I read the newspaper, there is always a reason to read it. If I listen to the news, so I eat a lot of chocolate. And then I also spent all my life in a medical field, so I know the dark chocolate is better for you than the other one. So I have a lot of dark chocolate. At that point, we were told that Budapest is being liberated by the Russian soldiers, and that while we are able to go to the yard, we cannot go to the street yet. And every day for a couple of hours, we were allowed to go into the yard because they figured nobody can turn us in anymore. And I remember I had to learn how to open my eyes and see the daylight because for 2 years I was in the dark. I also had to learn how to feel the sun. I remember the sun feeling on my skin, and learning, my eyes had to learn how to adjust to the light. It was those little circles in it. It was both pleasure and pain. And learning the sun feeling on your body and able to breathe fresh air. We were not always in some kind of horrible place to be locked up. And then they told my mom that we are free to go to anywhere we wanted to go. The little girl was adopted by the underground who found her because he didn't have any children, and he found out that she has nobody. And my mom and I went back to my grandfather's estate in hope that if anybody survived, they will come back. But we found out that my mother lost everybody except one half-brother, and my birth father was killed, and his sister was killed, and his sister-daughter was killed. And we lost 96% of our family. And my mom received a letter a couple of weeks after we were there, and we stayed actually in the people's house who had saved me originally because the main house was taken over by the Russian soldiers as their headquarters. And my mom received a letter from my birth father's best friend who was a witness to his murder, and he apparently promised my father that if he survives, he will look after us. And he wanted to fulfill his promise, and my mom left me there for a couple of days, and then they met my birth father's brother, and the three of them decided that since I was such a bad shape emotionally, psychologically, and physically, that it was better for me not to be told that my father was murdered if this man is willing to raise me. And I came back, and this little man came back with my mom, and he had a package in his hand, and he was introduced to me as my father. And I opened the package because it's the first time I got a gift in 2 years, and there was a doll in it. While I was ripping up the package, I put my doll, which by this time went through the river, all the places we were hiding, everything was filthy, dirty, and I was trying to be a good mommy, and I kept on putting little breadcrumbs into the mouth of the doll, thinking that if my mother fed me, I have to feed the doll. And I didn't know that the doll was probably full of bugs and also bacteria. It was very possible that I got sick because of the doll. And so I ripped up the package, and there is one of those celluloid dolls with the false eyelashes and the glass eyes. And as soon as I saw that, I remembered my doll, but it disappeared. No, everybody acted like they have never seen it before. And the new doll was never the same. We went back to Budapest. My stepfather had found a place which was a bombed-down building, and there was one little apartment which was partially livable. And we lived there until 1956. Each time when he could afford it, he had added a piece of the house. It was an architectural nightmare because you had to go through every room to get to another room. My stepfather was a master craftsman in wood. I was also taught how to do everything in the business because we were Jewish, and my stepfather didn't join the communistic party because he hated them. So we were always abused by the communists. The house were always searched. We were kept on being fined for things. So they figured if they will be adopted, I have to learn how to run the business. So I learned everything about the business, but I never was told about my parentage because my parents were very damaged because of the Holocaust. My stepfather lost 10 siblings and all his family. My mother lost 6 siblings and all her family. They could not talk about it. They were very damaged. So I didn't find out until I was 12 years old that my birth father was murdered and this man was not my father. And what bothered me then was that if I would have known that he did all this good stuff for me, I could have been a better child. Instead, I was very grateful to him. In 1956, we left. Hungarian Revolution broke out. We escaped when the Russians took over again. We went to Austria. We were in a DP camp for 9 months because Nixon was the acting president, and he decided only 3 Jews to 100 Hungarians could come to the country. And in 1957, September 11th, I came to the United States. I was 16 and a half, and I spoke 3 languages, but not English. But my parents, we came to the LA because my stepfather's brother was here, who was a gay man, and he knew that if he comes back to Hungary, they kill him. So he never came back to Hungary, and we settled in Los Angeles. I lived at Eastern Alvarado for 6 months or so until my father and my mother got a job. We moved back to La Cienega and Melrose area. I went to work at I was 17 years old when I went to work full time and went to school at night because I wanted to help my family. My first job was a shipping clerk. And then I became a part of the office, and then I went to work at Cedars-Sinai. I worked there for 40 years in cardiology. I ran 3 cancer centers afterwards in the valley. I have 2 kids, 2 grandkids, and 2 half-sisters who are living in the United States. Ask any questions, please. There is no stupid questions. Was it okay?
Yes, you did great. You did great.
I was trying to keep it down to the hour. Any questions?
Eva kept saying, I said, Eva, you're amazing. And she said, say it at the end, after my presentation. Eva, since I took some pictures when I was with you, we'll just run them in the back.
Okay.
And then we'll conclude with Rabbi Waznika leading us in Hatikva. I'll say some closing remarks. Does that sound? Yeah? Okay.
I am yours, whatever.
All right. Okay. So we're going to run the pictures, Rabbi Ben. Okay.
That's me with my doll at a year old.
I took these pictures on my phone as I'm sitting with Eva. And the next one.
That was my birth father. That's my stepfather and my mom. That's me and my mom. That's me when I was about 10 years old. That's DP camp in 1956. That's my stepfather, my mother, and my 2 little half-sisters. I am 14 years old, and I know that because right after that they made me cut my hair because they told me since I was only Jewish girl and I didn't look like anybody else, I have to have short hair. They made me cut my hair. I'm 14 years old. That's me when I got married. That's me and my 2 children. That's my daughter and her husband, who is a private pilot. That's my 2 grandkids. That's my son. And those are the shoes that one of those shoes were mine.
Wow. Wow. Eva, stay here. I'll invite Rabbi Waznika.
Was it okay? I'm always worried.
I'll just speak very briefly before we invite Cantor Lutz up here to lead us in Hatikvah. You know, there's 7 candles here, as you know, and this one was for hope. And Eva Nathanson, I have to say that hearing you and trying to imagine where I was at 4 years old and how my life has been, it's not fully possible for any of us to be in your shoes. And that said, listening to you and imagining your life at that moment and beyond, and imagining you have marriage and children and grandchildren, embodies a hope that I don't think any of us can imagine. And I'm going to take a lot of things home with me later on, but one of them is appreciation, because every single one of us are so blessed to have what we have, and so blessed to have you and people like you in our lives that we get to hear from. It's a gift beyond imagination. God bless you. In a moment, I'll ask you to rise for Hatikvah, which means the hope. It's not a coincidence that the national anthem of our people is about the future. It's about hope. And there are moments when you can stand before a flag and have hope, particularly these days, which are difficult times for Israel and our people. And at the same time, there are other ways of having hope. And one of the ways to have hope is to look at this bima and see this woman here and think, this is hope. This is the future. This is Israel. And this is all of us. I'm going to ask you to rise and join Cantor Emma in Hatikvah.
Kol od balevav benima nefesh Yehudi homia ulfate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia Od lov tikvateinu, hatikva bachnot hamayim, liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Liotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim.